Have you ever thought, like, man, I kind of really want to read more manga, but I have no idea where to go for more manga recommendations? There aren't the same popular manga over and over again, something really out there to expand my taste in manga. Well, if you ever thought that, then you came to the right place, because this is Crash's random box of manga, and in every video I'm going to be recommending you some lesser known, more out there manga. I can promise you that all of these are going to be 10 out of 10s, but what I can promise you is that I think all of them are going to be interesting in some form or another. From strange out there manga to item gems to historically important manga that time has forgotten to just absolute trash manga that is nonetheless baffling that it even exists. The point of the series isn't to give you the best series in the world, but instead just show you just how varied and interesting and fun the world of manga really is. So let's start with our very first one. Soil is a manga by Atsushi Kaneko, and it was published between 2004 and 2010 in the magazine Comic Beam, and it counts a total of 90 chapters across 11 volumes. This is a series that can be kind of compared to Twin Peaks, I think. I have never seen Twin Peaks, but from what I know, it kind of seems to have more or less the same idea. And so basically the plot of this one is that there's two detectives that are tasked to solve a mystery in this rural town in the middle of Japan named Soil. The mystery is extremely convoluted. There was a blackout during one night, and during the blackout it seems that an entire family disappeared. Not only the parents and their daughter, but also their pet hamster and even all the living plants in their house. All the living things were just gone during this short blackout. Not only that, but the next day there's a huge pile of salt in the middle of the schoolyard, and on top of it there's the art of the hamster. But this is just the beginning of a mystery that is, as more details start to emerge, starts to peel off the layers of secrets hidden not only within the town residents and all the conspiracies and their many crimes, but also the history of the town itself and its mysterious supernatural roots. This is a manga that is constantly on the line between what is normal and what is supernatural, and I'm not going to tell you exactly which line the manga eventually ends up falling in, but I'm going to tell you that it is quite the journey to get there. This entire manga is extremely surreal, and I think that's just because of the plot, which, yes, sure, it is incredibly strange, but also because Atsushi Kaneko has this unique style to this manga. Like, his art style is so... It's so unique to manga. You won't find any other mangaka that really draws like him, and it just feels like you're reading something different. It all helps this feeling of a fever dream that propagates throughout his manga. Not only with the art style, but also the paneling, the way that some events and some characters are presented, that just everything is so strange. And it's a manga that really stayed with me when I finished reading it. That was kind of why I wanted to start this series with it first, because I think out of all the manga that I'm going to be talking about, probably across all the series, this is kind of like the one that I want you to go in and I want you to experience first, because it is really fun. It is really strange and surreal again. Blazing Transfer Student is a manga by Kazuhiko Shimamoto that was published in Weekly Shonen Sunday between 1983 and 1985. It has a total of 118 chapters across 12 volumes, and it's the longest manga we're going to be talking about in this video. Blazing Transfer Student is a manga that I've been wanting to talk about in this channel for a long time. I've actually covered it in a collab with Trenton in his channel where we talked about gag manga, and this is kind of the funniest manga I've ever read in my entire life. Kazuhiko Shimamoto, I think, is a mangaka that is way more popular in Japan than he is in the West, which I'm sure is true for a lot of mangaka, but I think this one is one of those cases where I feel like he's quite important in Japan, but in the West, it just nobody talks about him. Blazing Transfer Student not only has had an OVA by Gainax back in the 90s that covered one of his arcs, but also has had a recent live-action sequel on Netflix that was released in like 2017 called Blazing Transfer Students, at least in the English version. And not only that, but the blazing is kind of like part of a couple more of Shimamoto's manga, including Blazing Ninja Man, for example. There's another one called The Blazing Nobunaga. It just there's not really a relationship between the three of them, but it just kind of like, I feel like it's kind of a marketing mechanism to connect them to Blazing Transfer Student, which I think is his most popular work. And Blazing Transfer Student is this extremely over the top, quite funny manga about three transfer students, or three students, that is our main character, the transfer student, his love interest, and then his rival, that are constantly shifting between schools and engaging into different sports in all of these different schools, except these sports aren't really played by their normal rules because they just decide to do something else, and it just goes into these over-the-top events, from a volleyball match that lasts for weeks because they keep shoving the ball at each other's faces until one of them just passes out, which apparently lasts weeks, to the iconic boxing match where our main character can't deliver his final special attack because his attack name is too long, and while he's trying to say it, the other opponent just punches him in the face because his special attack has a shorter name and then he can say it shorter. Those are just two examples of just how stupid this manga is, because that's what the manga is. The manga is incredibly stupid, but in like the best ways. Like, all of the characters, they're just absolutely insane, and you're gonna have to just deal with that. Like, if you're gonna read Blazing Transfer Student, you need to understand that it is going to be insane, just gonna be fast-paced. It's not gonna make any sense. These characters are gonna say shit that is absolutely out there, and it has gonna have some sense, but not really. It gives me kind of the same feeling that at least the dialogues of Shimamoto give me kind of the same feeling of the book Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where it's absolutely insane. Every line of that book it's absurd, and that's kind of like Shimamoto is, and that's kind of what Blazing Transfer Student is. And it's one of the funniest books, one of the funniest manga I've ever read. So if you have any semblance of sense of humor, go check it out. Heibi Shoujo, released in English way back, I think, in the 90s as Reptilia, is a manga by horror master Kazuo Umezu, more well known for Drifting Classroom. And hopefully this video has come out before Halloween, so if you want horror manga recommendation, there's going to be a couple of them. This is the first one, and it kind of comprises of three pretty big chapters, which each of them are its own story. They're compiled into volumes, but they were originally released in the magazine Shoujo Friend. This is a relatively old manga from 1965. It's, I think, one of Umezu's first manga, so there's going to be a lot of elements to it that I feel like it's probably going to be outdated, but I still think it is good even for today's standards. I think you can find a lot of Junji Ito and his manga and his style. You can find a lot of its roots in Kazuo Umezu, and even going back, as far back as the 1960s. There's a lot of it that influenced a lot of horror manga, and in that aspect I think it's interesting, but I still think it's a solid, good collection of stories even to this day. So even though every chapter of the three isn't really fully connected, they kinda all have the same theme, where they have this Snake Woman, which is the title of the manga itself, Heibi Shoujo, Snake Woman, and this little girl that just happens to be involved with it. The first one sees the Snake Woman kind of replace the mother of the main character, and no one believes that she is now a Snake Woman, which makes sense, and that kind of like the horror is based on that. Well, I think the art style is very cute. Like, this is a manga that was made for kids, and you can see that. I still think the manga is very unnerving at times and can be a really good horror manga to check out, again, especially if you're looking for something to read this Halloween. The English version is very old and out of print, and I don't think you can find it, at least not very easily, but there are ways to read these manga, so you just go check it out. You're probably not gonna be able to find it physically, that's all I'm saying. If you want to go even further, then Machi no Kodomo or Children of the City is for you. It's a one-shot from 1947 by the mangaka Yutaka Aso, which was apparently a popular mangaka in the 1920s. And this is kind of like work in late of his career, and those works weren't really that popular. So this one was, as far as I can tell, lost, but then discovered and republished again last year. And it's such an interesting book. So this is it. This is the book. As you can see, it's very short. It's a one-shot with, I think, just a couple, like 30 pages. The paper of it is like, this is Japanese edition, but which I think is the only edition that exists. But you can get this because the entire manga is silent, and it's about these two boys in the post-war period, kind of just living, and it gives me the same vibe of something like Children of the Grave, not Children of the Grave, Grave of the Fireflies. If you've watched that movie, and if you want something, you know, also worth breaking about the same time and about kids dying post-war, then this one is for you. I think what's so impressive about Machi no Kodomo is that this story just doesn't feel like something that should have existed in 1947. It feels a lot closer to stories that you can read, like the Gekiga, like 60s, 70s. 1947, as you're going to see with the next one, we're mostly talking about like kids manga. I don't think you weren't even allowed to talk much about World War II because this was during the occupation era, where the Americans were kind of like restricting a lot of the things that you could talk about. And so something like this just even exists is special by itself. But the fact that it was so ahead of its time, I think is really one of the reasons why you should check it out. Now this, I don't think there's a physical, I don't think there's a digital version of this. There's definitely no translation because it's a silent manga. It has no lines. But I'm gonna give you a website that you can find this. This is actually the website that's sponsoring this video, but we'll talk about that later in this video, because next is Bat-Kid. Bat-Kid is again another 1947 manga. This one by Inoue Kazuo, and it kind of has like 6 chapters published, again, 1 volume, and it was originally released in Manga Shonen. What is so important about Bat-Kid is that this is kind of like the first baseball manga, at least the first serialized baseball manga story, and as far as I can tell, one of the early sports manga just in general. And this is kind of like part of a re-release of old manga that Bubbles, like this publisher, is doing. They did Bat-Kid, and they did Igaguri, which I'll show you, but it's actually where my camera is on top of, and I haven't read that one, so I'm not going to recommend it. But Bat-Kid is interesting, again, historically. I feel like it's very important. It's one of the early sports manga. You can definitely tell if you read Bat-Kid and then you read Machi no Kodomo the differences. This is a fully fledged kids manga. What I think is interesting is that you can fully see the differences between a 1947 manga pre-Astro Boy. Like Osamu Tezuka debuted the year before with Diary of Matcha in 1946. So this one, it's so much different than manga that you're used to now, but I think it's important to go back to the roots. Now you do have to set up some expectations to this manga. Again, it is a fun, short manga about baseball for little kids post-war. You can read Machi no Kodomo to see how they were going, like what the kids were doing in 1947. Then you can check a Bat-Kid in and say like, yeah, they kind of needed this, right? So lower expectations in terms of the quality, but I think in terms of like historically, this is definitely one that you should check out. Then Town of Pigs is another horror manga. This is a 1-volume manga written in 1985 by Hideshi Ino, which I think is together with Junji Ito and Kazuo Umezu, I think they're like the big three horror mangaka. They kind of all have, even though they technically worked at around the same time as well, they kind of all have different beginnings. Like they start in different eras, and so their style is very different. Deshinu is very gory, even though he has his very unique art style, which is, I would call it cute and ugly. Now, I've recommended Panorama from Hell before on the channel, so today we're going to be talking about Town of Pigs, which is another manga that was released physically in English. I don't think it's his most popular, but I think it is his most recent to be published and probably the easiest for you to get a hold of if you want to buy it digitally or if you want to buy it physically. A lot of these manga are not available physically though, so have in mind. But Town of Pigs is. And Town of Pigs is an interesting one. It has that really cheesy B-movie feel. I feel like a lot of Ino's manga have it. What's so interesting about Ino and about Town of Pigs and about honestly all of his manga is that they're gory, but I feel like the art style really takes away from being as disturbing as it could have been. And so you have like Ino, which is more well known as a manga artist, but he also have made movies, and those movies are the ones that you can kind of find in like those disturbing iceberg movie, disturbing movie icebergs and stuff like that, because without his art style, the thing that he shows in those manga now in like a live action movie is just so extreme and over the top that he was almost arrested. This guy was almost arrested because of the movies that he did. The Town of Pigs, which I do have it here, is again also a short one. Is one that it sees. I think it's kind of a really ridiculous plot, but it's horror manga. They're all ridiculous, right? So this is about a kid who sees his town invaded by demons, and his demons like capture everyone except him, and they want to turn the entirety of the town into pigs. And they kill everyone that refuses to be turned into a pig. And kind of like the story is more about the kid trying to survive and trying to run away from these demons that are now like everywhere and specifically after him because they know he's out there and he's the last one of his town. Despite kind of like the ridiculousness of turning people into pigs, there is a genuine terrifying like feel to this manga of like this kid is the only one and everything all these creatures are after him and we don't know how he's going to survive. If you do read Town of Pigs, the ending I don't get. I don't understand the ending. So if you do read it, this is kind of like my reason to put it on this list is read Town of Pigs, check the ending, and then come back to this and comment below what you think of the ending. And if you make any sense of what it means, please let me know, because I don't get it and I want to get it. It is an interesting, strange ass plot twist that comes out of nowhere. I need to understand if it makes sense or if it just doesn't. Please help me. Flashpoint is a 2024 indie manga by Imai Arata. I have a special edition of it. Looks really cool. Looks really nice. This is the Portuguese version. This is a special edition of the Portuguese version. And this is a manga that has only been translated into English and Portuguese. And it seems like it's a manga that has been becoming more popular among English fans and among Portuguese fans than it actually is in Japan. At least that's the feeling that I'm having. I really like this one. I don't think this was published anywhere else, like in physically, like in a magazine. I mean, I don't think it was published in any magazine because it is an indie manga. But this one feels strangely like an autobiographical manga because the main character of this manga is the author Imai Arata himself, and his supposedly sister of his wife, and everything about this manga feels like it could have happened to Arata himself, because a lot of it is very mundane and it tackles a real life event that actually did happen, which is the assassination of former Japanese president Shinzo Abe. Except the second half of this manga goes absolutely insane, and there's no way it happened without you having heard about it on the news. And that's how you know this story is fiction. The plot is about this girl, which is the author's wife's sister. I'm sure there's a word for that. Sister-in-law that starts doing TikTok videos and TikTok dances, and Arata is the cameraman. And all goes nice, all goes fun. They start gathering a following, but then they kind of get involved into Shinzo Abe's assassination due to people making like conspiracy theories online about the girl and the dances that she's doing. And again, the story just goes absolutely insane in the second half. I really recommend you go checking it out. It's really, really fun. I think it's one of my favorite manga that I've read this year, and it's available on your language if you speak English, and your language if you speak Portuguese, and your language if you speak Japanese, probably. Go check it out. Support Imayarata. He follows me on Twitter. But if you want to know where to buy Flashpoint, Town of Pigs, Bat Kid, and yes, even Machi no Kodomo, then let's talk about the sponsor of today's video, which is the manga store Sendai Books. I need you to understand one thing about Sendai Books, which is that they didn't send me this. They did send me something. We'll talk about that later. They didn't send me this. I bought this from their store because I love their store. The Sendai Books actually a side project of the publisher Sendai Editora, which is a Portuguese publisher that I really love, and the only publisher in the world where I actually have every single book that they've published, because I love them and I want to support them. I've been wanting to support them since they started back in 2020. One of the cool things about Sendai Editora was that they made this store online where they would sell not only their own stuff, but also they started selling books by publishers like Glacier Bay Books, like Starfruits, like Bubbles, like these niche manga editors or publishers, and they would put their manga on sale to sell to Portuguese people without shipping and for relatively cheap. It was definitely the best way for us to get hands on these kinds of manga, and then eventually they started doing it for all of Europe, again without shipping. And then because there's just a lot of demand, they eventually started their own new store, which is Sendai Books. Sendai Books is available for most countries, though temporarily not available for the United States, not because of Sendai Books' faults, but because of tariffs, which is the fault of another dude, which I'm not gonna name. They just have like so much like interesting stuff in the store. And the owner of the store asked me if I wanted a sponsorship, and hell yeah, I want it because I love this store. And no, honestly, part of me didn't want to talk about it because I kind of want to have the store just for myself, you know. But I understand that if we want the store to, survive and exist, it can be just a store for me. I need you guys' help to go there and buy stuff and help the store just flourish so I can have stuff for me as well. And I think you should go and find, again, it has so much interesting stuff out there, and you can go and buy it, and you'll be helping not only me but the store, but also a lot of these niche, smaller indie companies that are publishing stuff that's just interesting and cool and out there and different that we need in the manga market. Stuff that Viz isn't going to publish. Stuff that Yen Press or Dark Horse are not going to publish. Because they're busy publishing all these big, giant titles that they're not going to publish, like Bat Kid or Town of Pigs or Flashpoint. Like these are not the kind of series that they are going to publish there. And if you go there and buy their stuff, it helps all of us. It helps me, it helps the store, it helps the manga industry, it helps you, because you're going to have interesting, cool stuff in your collection that you can read and expand your manga tastes. And that's why you're here, because you want that. And I'm just gushing. This is not an ad. I'm just gushing about the store because I really do love it. But turning it back into an ad, if you want to go there, there is a link in the description below, and there's also a code that you can use for the next Crash 5. And if you use that code, you're gonna get 5% discount, and you should do that. But to help you decide which stuff to buy, not only can you get the stuff that I recommended before, but they send me stuff. So this is also an unboxing video. This is stuff that I wanted to get already. So this is, I'm gonna use my Sparrow toy to pop figure to open it. This is, I'm not gonna say this is extra recommendations necessarily because I haven't read them, so I don't know, but it is kinda like bonus stuff that you can also read if you want, because I'm interested in it, and maybe you're interested in it as well. If you want to buy it, you can just go there. So this is what I bought. 5 manga. First of all, we got a postcard by the for the manga The Orders of Norei Michiru, which is a book that I did get. This is a horror manga, and I love horror manga, and I don't think I can show you the stuff, but it looks really gruesome. This is a one-shot collection or by the mangaka Norei Michiru, which is, I don't know, I haven't read anything from her, but this one looked fun, so I got it. Also horror, I got The Secret Urban Legends, which is a shoujo horror manga. That is this Japanese? If it is Japanese, I wasn't aware that it was Japanese when I got it. Let's see. Oh no, it is in English. Okay, it is in English. We're fine. But it has like the Japanese title here, and the background is all in Japanese, so that confused me. Again, I just like having horror manga. I've never heard of this Ryo Azuki, never heard of her, but one shots about urban legends. I was really into urban legends, like, you know, back to creepypasta era, so I just kind of like looked interesting, and I just realized that I got an extra bonus just for me. It's not on the store. This is a Japanese copy of Memories of Amanon. If you don't know, this is my favorite manga of all time. Sendai Editora has the Portuguese version, which I do own, and I do own the English version, so now I got the Japanese version. Oh my god, this is great. I'm learning Japanese, so maybe one day I'll be able to read this one. Thank you, really. God. We got 2 more stuff. Talking about learning Japanese, I got some Japanese manga, some bilingual manga, which they do have, which is awesome. So what this is Jungle Emperor Leo by Osamu Tezuka. If you don't know, this is kind of like the Kimba the White Lion. This is the original Japanese title. This is Japanese manga, but this is a bilingual manga. These manga are made for Japanese kids that are learning English, and they are actually in English. But I don't know if I can focus, but they are in English. This is in English. I don't think you can tell. But up here is also the Japanese of the Japanese like original. And so the idea is that you read the English text, and then you read the Japanese, and you realize it. And I also got also bilingual manga, the Daichi Files. I think it's what it is called. It is kind of like a mystery novel in the same style of Detective Conan. It is very popular in Japan. I've heard a lot about it, but I don't think there's any English version of it. So the fact that they have the bilingual version looked interesting, and I got it. And yeah. So these are all stuff, except the Amanon book. These are all stuff that you can buy in the store. Sendai Books, link in the description, code in the description, And again, it's just cool stuff you can add to your collection, and it's fun and it's great. They also have a French manga now and Italian manga now, if you want to get that. And it ships everywhere, and free shipping for the European Union. So if you're in the European Union, awesome, go buy stuff from them and support them, please. Thank you. Back to more recommendations. There's more recommendations. Heartful Company is a 4-chapter, 1-volume long manga by the manga artist Manga, who is more well known for his 90s gag manga in Weekly Shonen Jump, Shinyuki, and this was written by Pierre Taiki, which apparently is a member of a Japanese synth pop called Denki Groove, who just happens to be friends with Manga and has wrote a couple of manga with him, and this manga was published in the magazine Comic Bound. This is a pure black comedy manga that is incredibly surreal, incredibly stupid. So basically the plot of this manga is that we follow the CEO of a weapons factory that is incredibly rich and evil and only thinks about money, as is probably all evil CEOs of weapon companies are. And one day he discovers that he has cancer and only has 6 months to live, so he decides to change his ways to stop being evil, be a good person, and start doing good deeds. The problem is neither him nor anyone he knows what a good deed actually is, so they just try to figure out what being nice is. But what happens is, as they try to do good things to the town they live in or the city they live in, they just end up fucking up and just making everything much worse, like releasing the Ebola virus to everyone, and the manga just keeps escalating and escalating and escalating, and there's just so much things happening. Like, this is a manga that is non-stop stupid, over the top, and if you've seen any of Mangataro's like art style, you'll realize that this is a guy that piles up details. Like, he's really good at making really ugly people, and honestly not much else, but these faces and expressions are all like screaming and over the top and filled with horrible details. That is amazing, honestly. Yeah, this is like a pure black comedy manga, so just have that in mind before jumping into this one. But this is definitely one of the most surreal, most interesting manga I've ever read, and it has a very proper style to itself, like the way that the gags work off of repetition. There's a lot of repetition within the manga pages. That is, I think, very unique to Gyakusatsu Artful Company, and it's definitely worth a read if you are the kind of person who enjoys black comedy. Let's Bible is a 2005 manga written by In Wang Yoon and drawn by Ki-hong Il Yang, and it's only 5 chapters long if you count the one-shot prequel, which we're counting, and it was published in Young Gangan, which means that, for me at least, I consider it to be a manga, despite having been written by 2 Korean dudes. It was published originally in Japanese, in Japan, and in a Japanese manga magazine, so to me, it's a manga. Now, here's the thing about Let's Bible. Every so often in these videos, I'm gonna show you a manga that is not good. As a matter of fact, it might be awful, very bad, but they are bad in very interesting ways. These are not the manga that you're going to if you want a recommendation for something nice to read. This is the manga that you go to if you want something to, like, just help your taste in manga. Just read like a pure trash, awful stuff, but in a way that is not boring, in a way that is just pure bad, but not in a boring way. So what we're gonna focus on in Let's Bible is the one shot. There's 5 chapters, including the one shot, which is kind of like a prototype of the manga itself, but then later in the manga, the main character of that prototype reappears and the one shot chapter actually becomes canon. Now, I think the 4 chapters that follow the actual series that got cancelled is boring, but the one-shot is something else. So Let's Bible, as you may have guessed by the name, it's based on the Bible, or to be more specific, as far as I've known, I'm not a full-fledged Christian, I haven't been to church, and actually I have been to church this year, but I haven't been regularly to church since I was like 12. This is based, from what I can tell, in the New Testament, the kind of like Jesus and the apostles kind of like reincarnate in various people. That's more or less the plot of the manga, is finding all these apostles, and our character is the reincarnation of Peter, Saint Peter. But what is so interesting is that our main character is this, I'm gonna compare it with Denji, but as someone who loves Chainsaw Man, that feels like a giant insult. But is like Denji in the sense that he's one of those characters whose lifelong goal is to lose his virginity, who hits on all the women and tries to take them to bed, and there's of course then a female main character that this guy is always trying to hit on. Now here is the very interesting part of this, is that the main anime girl that is constantly getting, sexually harassed by our main character, is the reincarnation of Jesus Christ of Nazareth. So we have a manga which our main character, the good guy of the story, is trying to sexually assault and lose his virginity to Jesus Christ of Nazareth. And I think just the fact that something like that exists is worth some kind of thesis, like just to study how we got here. I think the more interesting part to me is that I don't think the authors wanted to insult Christianity, like they're clearly not Christians themselves, but I feel like they approach this with the same liberty and the same interest as you would like Greek mythology, for example. But I feel like they don't realize that there's people who are still active members of Christianity, and they might not like having your God, the person, or not the person, but the deity, I guess you believe in, just be shown, and not only as an anime girl, because I don't think that necessarily is a bad thing. It's weird, but it's not the worst thing. I think pretty much everything ever in the world has been shown as an anime girl, but that you have your main character trying to take Jesus fucking Christ of Nazareth to bed to lose his virginity. I think that is another level of insanity. I think just for that, Let's Bible is worth at least a read, at least that first one-shot chapter. We eventually move on from that character, probably because he was asked to a monk character, and the manga kind of just becomes like this average battle shonen, even though it is a seinen manga, but it kind of just becomes kind of like this average battle shonen. But that one shot, I think is definitely worth a read. If you're someone who's just heard that and was like, how? I need to see that happening. Like, just go check it out. It still baffles me to this day. It's been years since I read it. It still baffles me to this day. Saint Muscle is the last manga of this video, and it was written by Miyazaki Tsutomu and was drawn by Fukushima Masami, and it's a 4-volume manga that was published in Weekly Shonen magazine itself, starting in 1976. Saint Muscle, I think, is a very underrated piece of manga history. We normally don't see it talked a lot, even though it has most likely influenced so many of the manga that you either like or have heard about. This manga it's essentially Fist of the North Star before Fist of the North Star. Like, this is 10 years before Fist of the North Star, and looking at it, you can kind of still see the same vibes. It's about this guy, which we're gonna call Saint Muscle, going to this almost post-apocalyptic world, finding these kingdoms and cities that are being ruled by evil people and just beating the fuck out of them. Essentially, it is very much like Fist of the North Star in plot, in feel, in character. 10 years before, it feels like Fist of the North Star. It feels like JoJo. It feels like Berserk. It is such a pivotal point of manga history that I feel like it has influenced so much of the world of manga as we know it. And it's a manga that we don't really talk about. Like, you don't see people talk about Saint Muscle at all. And so I just kind of wanted to use this platform to let it be known and let people just go and jump into it and read it. Now, there's going to be a lot of nudity. There's a lot of violence to it. But I don't think it is much more than you'd expect from Fist of North Star. There's no, like, genitalia, for example, shown. There's asses. That there is. Massive double spread happening at one point. But not anything that I feel like is overly graphical. The violence, sometimes. But so you do have to have that in mind. But I think if you are someone who really enjoyed Berserk, really enjoyed Fist of North Star, really enjoyed the early parts of JoJo, you really need to go back one layer and read Saint Muscle and rediscover this classic that really needs a lot more exposure and really needs a lot more people talking about it, because it's important. I think it is a very important manga. And that said, that is 8 manga plus a couple bonus stuff that I unboxed, and I hope you enjoyed. If there's any manga that you think fit this kind of video, leave in the comments below, and I'll ponder putting on these videos. And if I haven't read them, I'll look them up, and I'll try to read them as well. If people enjoy this, video, people enjoy the recommendations that I give you, I'm gonna try to make this kind of like a regular series, because I had a lot of fun recording this, and there's a lot more manga that I want to talk about, a lot more manga that I could recommend here, and a lot more manga that I want to read that I'm gonna probably be able to recommend these videos as well. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that, and if you watched till here, thank you very much, and I'll see you next video.